the human being and their advisors. All the tools we possess within ourselves are excellent counselors. They were not placed there by chance. Within us, we have feelings and thoughts. Two tools, both excellent counselors. Do not ignore one in favor of the other. By doing so, you are denying half of yourself. And with only half of yourself, you cannot build a whole human being, nor can you construct a complete sense of life. I am reminded of Gibran, who said that one who does not work with love expresses only half the grape. One who does not live with love conveys only half the message they are meant to bring to the world. I think he is being generous. Sometimes not even that much is conveyed. Teresa of Avila, I believe most of you know her, right? What a fantastic figure, truly, and so courageous as well. Today, she is considered a doctor of the church, though it took a long time for her to receive this recognition. It was in 1975. Until then, there had been male doctors of the church. She was the first woman. Every time a pope rejected her, he'd cite her gender. Did you know that? She wasn't considered a doctor of the church because she was a woman, yet she had every other qualification. She was an extraordinary figure. Teresa of Avila, then in the Avila household of Spain, the Spanish woman with very fragile and difficult health. In the entire Carmelite convent, at a very young age, she was struck by a serious illness and nearly died. And when she returned, almost from the brink of death, she came back with a strength, a vivid vision, and a much greater determination to draw closer to the mysteries of life. Everyone knows it was something that was somewhat humble. She enters this Carmelite convent and begins to embrace the discipline. It seems as if you have read her work, The Interior Castle or The Mansions. Her discipline of mental prayer, of mental mastery, of mystical ecstasy, resembles the Zen disciplines for reaching samadhi or the practices for attaining satori. Zen disciplines for satori, Indian disciplines for samadhi, pardon my mistake. In other words, she developed a method of concentration, of elevating consciousness, which has been used by various other traditions and is truly remarkable. She reached a level of mysticism that was far beyond the ordinary. She was a figure deeply concerned with the duty of offering humanity a pure connection with the divine, without self-interest. Since she believed that the Carmelite order was too focused on external matters, too oriented toward society, she left and founded a new order, the Discalced Carmelites. These were women who lived in absolute isolation, in complete poverty. She was an extraordinary figure. She was even denounced to the Inquisition because of the creation of this order. Their names appeared before the Inquisition, both hers and that of her main disciple, Saint John of the Cross, who is now also canonized and was a great philosopher, a profound thinker, and an exceptional bishop. They were brought before the Inquisition for rejecting the rules of the old order. It took her more than 10 years to have her name removed from the records of the Inquisition, so she could continue founding her orders. She established 17 throughout her life. 17, so to speak, convents of Discalced Carmelites within Spain, dedicated to poverty, meditation, and the inner life. There came a certain point when she had so much mystique, such an elevated level, that people began to say, no one does this unless they have a pact with the devil. This is not human. They denounced her again, until she found a confessor, a priest, very young, who said, no, what you have is mystique. It has nothing to do with the voice of the devil. She continued with her disciplines, with her mental prayers, all her methods. The Sufis called this daik a state of constant mental prayer. You see how everyone who truly seeks is like someone looking at a tree on top of the mountain. All those who are true seekers end up finding the same thing. There came a moment when the Sisters of the Carmelite order, which were always very small communities of about 18 to 20 sisters, would be somewhat startled until they became familiar with it, because it is said that when she entered the prayer room, sometimes she would reach such an endemic level of concentration. Several sisters of the time documented this, that she began to levitate. Everyone was astonished. Then this became part of history, and everyone says it's just a legend. Imagine someone levitating. Well, I will tell you a Sufi parable in which they say, the hand levitates. It is here, but why does it levitate? Because it is connected to a forearm, an arm, a body, and it accepts being an instrument of that body. Because if it is isolated from the body, from the whole, a hand on the ground does not levitate. And it is said that every human being who approaches the mystery of unity, which is the mystery of God, carries within themselves the capacity to act as if they were a hand of this body. So at this moment, my hand serves my body, and that is why it levitates. If it wished to serve only itself, it would be on the ground. They spoke about this because also in Sufism, you may have heard about this. The Sufis, the whirling dervishes who began to spin, you've seen this tradition, they would spin and spin, and it is said that they would start to move like a screw levitating. And they explained it in this way. A dervish who finds union with God is like a hand that joins the body, and the power of the body flows into this hand if it is truly serving it. In short, this story is present in various traditions. I am not here claiming this as the absolute truth. But whoever serves unity possesses the attributes of unity, and the powers of unity are amplified in peace. And there are many who speak of this same thing. So in any case, see, this is a passage from it. I don't know if you have ever seen this statue, which is a statue by Bernini, inspired by the moment from the memories of Teresa of Avila. She says that one day she dreamed of an angel who came with a flaming arrow, a sword of fire, which pierced her heart several times and set her heart ablaze. Bernini created this sculpture as a tribute, this vision of Teresa of Avila, of the fire that was awakened in her heart, which burned away all selfishness, all individualism in its negative sense, and placed her entirely at the service of the sacred. And she spoke of this: whoever truly loves God, loves all that is good, desires all that is good, favors all that is good, praises all that is good, joins with the good, always defends them, embraces all virtues, does not love what is not truth, nor what is not worthy of love. In other words, it is important to tell you that whoever loves God loves his attributes. Observe how a person serves the good, how much one strives for goodness to be embedded in their heart, so that their heart becomes a drop of goodness engraved within their being. Those who work for the good and have goodness as their life goal, not a subjective good, that which benefits only oneself, but that which leads all beings back to unity, to fraternity, to justice, to the attributes of God, to grow and to help others grow. Whoever works for the good is certainly in connection with the divine. The path of humanity to God is through his attributes. She says, this is the one who is a servant of God. In practice, they are a servant of the good. This is part of a poem. You know, she was a poet, And there are some beautiful things. There are things within the Christian tradition, my friends, that one day I won't give up. I will take and start giving talks about them because there are truly beautiful things. The Confessions of St. Augustine, which she even says transformed her after reading that book, and which is still available to us. The Imitation of Christ by Thomas A. Kempis, the books of Teresa, John of the Cross, and a mystic called Teilhard de Chardin, truly remarkable. And also John Bunyan with his Pilgrim's Progress. There are things of such beauty that you cannot even imagine. Do not come and say this was religious, not philosophical. It is philosophical, a quest for wisdom. For our works, I repeat, you are going to leave me as a light in the world. How could not be philosophical when philosopher multiplies light? Very famous from her, part of one of her poems. Let nothing disturb you. Let nothing frighten you. Everything passes. God does not change. Patience achieves everything. Whoever has God lacks nothing. Only God is enough. There is a French Christian ecumenical group called TZ, in fact, where they perform all their ceremonies in song. They made a beautiful melody for this prayer by Teresa d'Avila. I brought a little snippet for you to see.
TZ.
TZ, T, A, I, Z, E, and many beautiful things. But personally, I listen to TZ constantly, and in particular, this interpretation of Teresa d'Avila's prayer is something truly divine. She was a woman living in an extremely challenging era who overcame the barriers of her own physical illness. She overcame the barriers of the Inquisition and managed to leave behind a testimony to the greatness of her love for the divine. Yes, if this is not a philosopher, if she is not a lover of wisdom, then I would not know who is. Maria Zambrano, now she is much more contemporary, so you can't say I didn't mention any contemporaries. Maria Zambrano was a Spanish woman who spent much of her life in exile because of the dictatorship in Spain. She is a woman who possesses great delicacy in addressing very interesting topics, subjects that were not in vogue in her time. She was a woman who lived until 1991, which is to say, a rather recent date. She worked with the ideas of Seneca, loved Seneca's thought, loved Spinoza, loved the ancient Greeks, and loved poetry. I came to know Maria Zambrano through a book called Philosophy and Poetry. She speaks about mysticism. She speaks about the idea of the sacred, about the awakening of the human soul. She is a woman educated in an academic context, very materialistic, very focused. This is the trend. It is the height of leftist thought within the academic world, the peak of a whole set of tendencies that were no longer so interested in the classical world. And she has a great refinement in her way of handling words. Maria Zambrano is very interesting. I brought this passage for you. Notice well, vocation is always the result of a sacrifice. And the philosophical vocation is born from the most relentless sacrifice, because it is not seen. The sacrifice is hidden within the philosopher, while it unfolds in all its beauty in the priest, the hero, the poet, the statesman, the artist. The sacrifice which, being invisible, is not understood by others, for to perceive the result of the sacrifice without having witnessed the sacrifice itself is a spectacle that is hardly accessible to humankind. And even when met with the greatest generosity, this thought always arises against the philosopher. If he had been something else, without even knowing Maria Zambrano, I had already heard this. Wow, you speak so well. If only you had become a lawyer, but fortunately I did not. Philosophy is seen as, what a pity such brilliant person dedicated themselves to something trivial. When hero or priest sacrifices themselves, everyone sees it. Hero's sacrifice, killed in battle. Priest's sacrifice, life in cloister. But do you know what it means to sacrifice oneself by stepping out of the collective, out of massification, to perceive something original in life and generate an idea? The sacrifice of alienation, of following trends at times, of friendships that stray too far from your conscience. The sacrifice of being accepted by the group, of being agreeable, of thinking like everyone else. Every time a moment arises when passions are running high, such as during elections, I already know. People are going to attack me from all sides because I do not take a stand in the rigid positions that society offers. In other words, I manage to displease Greeks, Trojans, Cariocas, and Parabanos alike. It's truly remarkable. The courage to place yourself outside the collective, to look at life with different eyes, with a learner's spirit, to consider that all suffering, joy, everything can be a lesson, to value every moment. This is no trivial matter, but you don't see this. You only see the result, the work that emerges. Sometimes it seems as if it just fell from the sky. Where did you acquire this? Do you have visions? No, I don't have visions. I have small daily insights, and at some point, I put them all together and see something. But it gives the impression that you didn't earn the merit to reach that conclusion. Did I buy this from someone today, right? Where did you get this from? I've heard that millions of times. Where did you get this from? Look, I don't know, but it was from a very hidden place, deep within myself. It was there. I spent years. It's been calling out. One day it appeared. There's still more. I'm still calling it forth. The fruit appears without the martyrdom having shown up. You understand? It's unforgivable for people. When they recognize some value, they say, oh, if only you had dedicated yourself to something else. She speaks of martyrdom and the philosophical condition. And that's what they say about value. You will notice that there are several elements that help humanity to live in a civilized manner. But the element that allows a person to find their identity and to discern among all things which are truly legitimate is philosophy. It is often said that the civilizational pyramid is made up of religion, art, politics, and science. These four civilizational facets. What is philosophy? It's a spiral, touching and comparing all these things. Does civilization need religion? It does. But is everything that is called religion truly religion? No, not always. Who will help you discern this? Philosophy. Society needs art, it needs politics, it needs science. Is everything that bears this name truly art, politics, or science? No. And who will help you discern this? Philosophy. It shapes, gives center, grants discernment to make necessary choices. Go beyond facades, not swept away collective. It gives you the tools to build your own identity. I remembered something I always share, a nonsensical story, but it held great value. Day, I was in a bookstore and leafed through Marilyn Monroe's diary. I've already told you about this. Don't ask me why. I was simply curious, so I checked it. There isn't a moment I said this. People say they love me, but in truth, they don't love me because they don't even know me. In fact, I don't even know myself. I can't love myself. I will die a stranger to myself. I found so painful. I thought she was a philosopher. Everyone knew she was sad, that she was beautiful, that she had good relationships with American presidents, but that she was a philosopher, no one knew. This kind of anguish, this longing for oneself, is a symptom of love and wisdom. There was something wanting to be born from the pains of labor. Notice that this is something sensational, beautiful. When you perceive this in a human being, you can begin to establish a dialogue to try to assist in the birth. As Socrates said, first you must be pregnant. So, philosophy is a privilege. It is something that lies on the path of every human being. It is a privilege to have arrived there. You don't need to have, so to speak, an academic title. You need to be pregnant with wisdom to some degree, at some level, and it helps you to understand all the things in life. In short, Zambrin, my favorite book of hers for very understandable reasons, which is poetry and philosophy, but all of her work, even when she does not speak of poetry, she has a very elegant, very beautiful way of speaking. She is not an aesthete. And this love of beauty, this perception of beauty as a primary element, is also a very feminine criterion. The feminine has the need not simply to move forward, but to move forward while nurturing the world, and to transmit and share this with all of humanity. Everyone needs beauty, but it is channeled primarily through the feminine heart. He was a Novalisian. I don't know if anyone is familiar with him. Novalisian, my 19th century philosopher. Today, it's debated if he was a philosopher. I say he was indeed. She is the founder of the Theosophical Society. She traveled the world when it was highly inaccessible. She entered Tibet when no one could, when it was difficult. She sought wisdom on every continent, living an adventurous life. She says, of the flowers in the bouquet, I offer humanity. Mine is just the ribbon that ties them together. She conducts a study that is both broad and profound, bringing a flower from each tradition of humanity and recovering knowledge that perhaps we would not have access to today. She influenced 20th century thought in a remarkable way. Many great scientists and thinkers found inspiration in what Blavatsky brought forth. And I recommend to you, above all, The Voice of the Silence, which is a Tibetan work translated by her. But everything she wrote is very interesting, challenging. Her thought is difficult to grasp at first glance, but it is truly fascinating. I myself have learned a great deal from her. I am a great admirer of her work. Here are some of her thoughts, just two. Nature reveals its most intimate secrets and shares true wisdom only with those who seek truth for the love of truth itself, and who aspire to knowledge in order to benefit others, not their own insignificant personality. Do you understand what she means here? Those who seek wisdom for the love of wisdom itself, not to show others how much they know, or for status, or to be celebrated, or to be recognized as a good person. All of this distorts the purpose because it profanes, commercializes, and falls into the logic of what I will gain from this. There's a poem I really like that says the following: the greatest reward for those who love is precisely to be loving. The greatest reward for those who seek wisdom is precisely to be seeking it. Any other additional reward that one expects, not that it may not come, regardless of our will, but that one expects as payment, already profanes, already commercializes. Do not forget that phrase from Cicero that I always like to repeat because he is a poor speaker, a terrible speaker. Do you know what a terrible speaker is like? Everyone leaves thinking about him. Look, did you see how charismatic he is? Wow, how convincing he is. Look at his vocabulary. Look at how much he knows. He is a terrible speaker. Everyone leaves thinking about him. And what about a good speaker? What is that? Everyone leaves thinking about themselves. That is the idea. He's a channel so that you think about yourself, not about him. His personality is merely a transmitting channel. He practically steps aside so that the message can pass through him. By striving to be as discreet as possible, Pythagoras would speak from behind a curtain. He is merely a channel. The center is the message. And the message is for you to reflect on yourself, not on the speaker. It says that seeking through philosophy or the pursuit of the mysteries of nature any personal privilege is a form of profanation. And when profaned, nature does not reveal its powers. One will always remain a superficial person. She used to say something like, if you don't like it, write to him and complain. www.philosophiaantiga, www.philosophiaantiga.com, www.philosophiaantiga.com. It's a good way to avoid trouble. Plato enjoys getting us into trouble. He says something incredible in the Republic. He said, in the future, philosophy be profaned by its attackers. These people are harmless. It will be profaned by those who, finding the door open, will enter and defame philosophy from within. That is more or less what he is warning about. Anyone who uses the search for truth, the pursuit of wisdom, and philosophical thought as a means of self-promotion or for obtaining personal advantages alone, not as a consequence, but as the main objective, is not worthy of having this wisdom open itself to them. They are not worthy of going beyond the surface. So, what do they become excellent promoters of? Of themselves. The universe is a combination of thousands of elements, and yet it is the expression of a single spirit, a chaos to the senses, a cosmos to reason. We look around and think there are many different people here with different clothes, different ages, different addresses. I would like to have a vision deep enough to perceive how you all fit together and produce an image that only you would be capable of composing. how together you transmit something. The fact that each of you is here at this moment is not by chance, and together there is a kind of energy, a kind of vibration, where the vibration of the group aids the understanding of each individual. I am not so profound as to perceive this. I would be lying to you if I claimed to pursue it, but when I reflect, sometimes in a group of 10 or 12 people, after spending 5 months with them, I look and say, this group would not have reached the level of understanding it has if even one of these people were missing. Their presence creates a condition that allows the entire group to understand. We begin to realize that there truly is no such thing as chance. When you deny chance, you start to perceive the law. And upon perceiving the law, what do you see? The arm of God extended over the choir. This is beautiful. It's no wonder the Indians said nothing is more sacred than recognizing the existence of Dharma. It is God's arm extended over the choir. Well, this is Helena Blavatsky. Marie-Louise von Franz is not considered a philosopher. She was a disciple of Jung. I came to know her through her love for fairy tales, a passion I share. She already had a fantastic symbolic vision. Marie-Louise von Franz met Carl Jung when she was 18. She came to study with him, to become his secretary, to learn. When she arrived, this is recounted in a documentary called Mysteries of the Heart. She herself tells the story. Jung saw a patient who claimed visiting the moon. An 18-year-old girl, interested in psychology, approached him. Master, what severe mental alienation this woman exhibits, claiming she was on the moon. He, displeased, turned to her. What is mental alienation? She was really on the moon and turned things around and left. She said that was a crucial moment. I thought he was crazy because I wasn't going to invest my life in a madman. I tried to understand what he was trying to say. I stopped, thought. Then something clicked for me. He was talking about that moon out there. Within us, there is something symbolic, equivalent to the moon. Something that orbits around us, sometimes obscure, sometimes clear, but always illuminated from outside, not within. Her consciousness remained in this external orbit, never reaching the sun, never reaching the center. It is this moon he is talking about. The work is a merit of nature. It is an external element. Attentive to his psyche, it is a peripheral element in which his consciousness has often dwelled, trying to reach the sun, but remaining very distant. And she said, look, from the moment I had this realization and understood it, I decided I will stay. She stayed for 28 years after Jung's death in 1961, and she was a truly special figure. She possessed a sensitivity for understanding symbolic things, my friends. In fact, I came across Marie-Louise von Franz because I was interested in the myth of the Grail, and she, together with Emma Jung, who was Jung's wife, wrote a remarkable work about the myth of the Holy Grail and a series of books on the symbolism of fairy tales. It is very beautiful. She is a very sensitive figure, a symbolic, profound vision. Everyone can and should develop this. But there is a leaning toward the feminine, as I have already mentioned to you. This is no joke, because out of love, she interprets things in the absence of them, to see how to help. This tendency, this empathy, is characteristic of the feminine. I told you our mother's intuition was formidable. I was a mother, and it was remarkable because when the child did something, you had to decipher whether it was hunger, sleepiness, or a stomachache. And after a while, we would figure it out. Or sometimes we wouldn't. The father hears and says, "They're crying." "You have a stomachache." "How do you know that?" "The way she cries means it's a stomachache." People think you're making it up, but it really was a stomachache. It's a funny thing, but when love is present, there is no one who can restrain the feminine. These are some phrases from Marie-Louise von Franz. In Europe, in ancient civilizations, among agricultural communities during wintertime, it was even said that fairy tales were the philosophy of the spinning wheel. In other words, those families who sat on the doorstep to tell fairy tales were not doing it just for the children. It was educational for grandparents, for parents, for children. Everyone would take a message from it. It was the philosophy of the spinning wheel. And she, through a very interesting observation of fairy tales, would extract the deep psychological elements that are within them. Much of what I learned, in fact, almost everything I learned on this subject came from her, which is truly worthwhile. It is a fascinating subject. It is much easier to admire a great personality, to become a student or follower of a guru or a religious prophet or an admirer of a great figure than it is to follow your own star. Look, everyone, she was beside a man who is no ordinary person. Carl Jung, I will tell you, we will need to live another 200 years just to understand this man. He was a man far ahead of his time. He was a truly brilliant personality. And she was not an idolater. Let me say something about her. What a level of character. The young woman I met at 18 was beside Carl Jung and was not an idolater. Meanwhile, we come along, and just by being near anyone, before long we are idolizing everything. In religion, we are idolaters. In politics, we are idolaters. In art, everywhere you look. Instead of developing your own potential and admiring others, taking them as a reference while understanding their duality, we do not do this. You simply take the other as a perfect being and make yourself a mere follower of what others have already done. It's easier this way. It's a convenient tool that gives the impression you're doing something, but you're fleeing your fundamental task, constructing your own cycle. A great philosopher of the past already spoke of this. Philosophy itself, even Buddha, talked about it. Do not focus on my finger that points to the stars. Look at the stars. It is like that lesson from the geese. You know that geese fly in a triangle to be able to migrate during the winter. And they take turns at the front. But everyone in that triangle must have a vision of the place to which they are migrating. They do not line up one behind the other, looking only at the back of the one leading. They are like geese, not a single file line. Everyone has a view of the reference point. From time to time, someone else moves to the front and guides everyone. They have a view of the reference point, and they do not idolize the back of the one in front. This is a fundamental element in philosophy. She understood no one in her position. Few resist the temptation of $100, because what was not lacking in Jung's group was idolatry. There was an endless line. Within the very circle of peers he participated in, the one he founded, there were quite a few idolaters. In an 18-year-old girl, don't you find that interesting? That is intuition, this deep perception, this sense of identity. She was indeed a disciple of Jung, but she was always Marie-Louise von Franz. And it was as Marie-Louise von Franz that she wrote her own story. It is easy to be an idealist in theory or a cynical realist. It is quite different to have no illusions and yet still keep the inner flame alive. Do you understand? Without illusions, without fantasies, keep the flame burning. If I'm not optimistic, I'll see scorched earth. Great. It's better for you to have scorched earth because that's good ground for you to lay your foundations and begin to build something real. Solid scorched earth on which you can build is better than castles in the air. In other words, when faced with scorched earth, keep your inner flame burning. Without fantasies, maintain the same enthusiasm, or even love, or dreams. It truly is very difficult. She is a philosopher. She did exactly that. An interesting figure. Pina, we cannot say more. Our time is short, and I'm going quite far. Gabriela Mistral, who knows her? Mistral is the first Latin American intellectual to receive the Nobel Prize in 1945. But it is not just because she received the Nobel Prize. She was a marvelous Chilean poet, everyone. Very interesting. From an early age, she lived with frustration, with pain, with death. Her philosophy, her poetry, which was itself philosophy, because one can also do philosophy through poetry. Even I, in my own way, try to do so as an amateur. Her poetry was always imbued with a concern for humanity, an interest in others, a care for the less fortunate. It was, in essence, humanist poetry. I have brought you this poem, which I find very beautiful and very interesting. But notice, we are in Latin America, Chile is right next door, and yet few people know the poetry of Gabriela Mistral. I once had the experience of going to Portugal and discovered that people there know more about Cecilia Meyerless than we do. I was quite impressed by that. I mentioned Cecilia Meyerless, and everyone went silent. I liked it. It was the same as in France. In Portugal, everyone knows Cecilia Meyerless. Truly remarkable. It was very interesting. But anyway, take a look at this poem by Gabriela Mistral. All of nature is a longing to serve. The cloud serves, the wind serves, service dwells in the valleys. Where there is a tree to be planted, the group plants it. Where there is a mistake to be corrected, the group corrects it. Where there is an effort that everyone avoids, they accept it all. Blessed is the one who removes the stone from the path, hatred from hearts, and the difficulties from a problem. There is the joy of being healthy and the joy of being just. But above all, there is the beautiful and immense joy of serving. How sad the world would be if everything were already done, if there were no rose garden to plant, no enterprise to begin. Let yourself not be drawn only to easy tasks. Service is not the work of lesser beings. God, who gives fruit and light, serves. One could call him thus, the one who serves. And he, who keeps his eyes on our hands, asks us every day, whom did you serve today? The tree? Your friend? Your mother? In other words, did you place in your day the service, the joy of serving, which is more or less what she did throughout her life after receiving the Nobel Prize? In fact, she was in Brazil, in Petropolis, when she received the news that she had won the Nobel Prize. She was a diplomatic representative of Chile in Brazil. She traveled all over the world, and this is her message, which was shared throughout the world. In other words, isn't transmitting this kind of message to the world what it means to be a philosopher? Certainly, for me, it is awakening human consciousness to the privilege of service, to be a factor that adds value to the whole. This is what philosophy is about. Once again, I wouldn't know how to define what philosophy truly is. That was Gabriela Mistral. For those who love poetry and did not know Gabriela Mistral, it is at the very least a sin, a grave one, and she was also a brilliant philosopher. Simone Weil, whom I would need much more time to discuss. Our time is a bit short, but let us speak very briefly. Simone Weil is a French thinker. Imagine someone from an upper middle class background, raised with great care, an intellectual recognized young, who becomes a philosophy professor at the Academy in Paris while still young. She finds herself at the height of a time when people are talking about the proletariat, revolution, the suffering of the working class. She said, "Oh, really? The proletariat suffers? Let me see what this suffering is." She resigns from her position as a professor at the Academy in Paris, a promising career, and takes a job as a factory worker. She spent a year there anonymous, observing how the proletariat lived. She was an intellectual, but one of such integrity, of such coherence between thought and action, that it was truly remarkable. "Oh, really? Is that so? Then I will go see for myself." After spending a year there, she leaves. It is very interesting because after that, she begins to perceive what redemption meant for those people she had seen in that condition. Her parents take her to Portugal to rest for a while by the seaside in a fishing community. And she sees the poor fishermen singing a song during a religious ceremony. She says, "Look, today people say that religion is the opium of the people. I think the opium of the people is hatred. Religion is a consolation. Mysticism is a way to elevate humanity above adversity." She takes an interest in mysticism. War is evil. She enlists, she fights in the war, but she goes. And she was a person who was always ill. She had fragile health her whole life. She would get herself into the biggest messes, and then the family would have to pick up the pieces. It's always like that. After she went through a serious health crisis, coming out of a war where she stepped into a pan of hot oil, it took her a long time to recover. As soon as she recovered, she wrote a letter, because at that time Germany was already invading the world, asking to be recruited as a paratrooper for the Allies. So, she asks, "Drop me somewhere really dangerous." In short, she is an explosive force. Let me read each of these sentences to you, so you can see how beautiful they are. "There is something mysterious in this universe that is an accomplice to those who love only what is good." What a marvelous mystical realization. There is something mysterious in this universe. If you do not believe in God, give it another name. But certainly, something mysterious in this universe is an accomplice to those who seek only what is good. They are not alone. What a deep and beautiful perception. Goodness is that which gives greater reality to beings and things. Evil is that which deprives them of it, whether it is an evil associated with ignorance or good associated with wisdom. And finally, this phrase that she says comes from an episode in her life. After many of those wild adventures, she enters a cathedral and writes this: "While I was alone in the small Romanesque chapel of Santa Maria degli Angeli, a place of miraculous purity where Francis prayed so often, Francis of Assisi, something stronger than myself compelled me, for the first time in my life, to kneel." She feels the presence of something so special in spirit, something truly unique each time. "For the first time, something in my life forced me to kneel. And in that moment, I understood the profound reason that has led humanity to fall to its knees so many times throughout history." She is a lover. She offered what she lived. People would say this. And she had a spirit of commitment to human suffering that was truly remarkable. She was in England, undergoing treatment for a serious illness. She learned that there was a shortage of food in France, her homeland. So she would only accept to eat the same amount that was being given to the people in France. She would arrange for the remainder of her food to be delivered to the resistance in France. And in these ways, wherever she was and whatever she could do, she was always thinking and feeling, putting herself in the place of others suffering. And so dedicated, she died very young, passing away before the age of 40. But always putting herself in the place of greatest risk to experience in her own flesh the pain of others, and from there, to reach her own conclusions. The social problems, the religious problems, the human problems, she came to the conclusion that the greatest enemy of humanity is hatred. Ultimately, she is a figure who is still being understood today because her contemporaries considered her to be mad. Her legacy has gradually been awakening, emerging into the world's attention with the greatness of the philosopher that she was. An intellectual, yes, but with a philosophy entirely applied to life, wholly committed to life, coherent and integral until her final moments. Therefore, a faithful observer, as Yumi would say. There she is, with an unconventional manner, a quirky way about her, not random. She truly was eccentric. We are a fascinating kind of eccentricity. Cecilia Mayrell's Our Beloved Poetess draws your attention. If you have not read the Canticles by Cecilia Mayrell's, you do not know what good poetry is. Prophets, Song of Songs, Canticles, Cecilia Mayrell's. You are truly unaware of what good poetry is. Cecilia Mayrell's work is beautiful, powerful. These canticles, if you didn't know its author and I said they were Zen mystical texts, you'd believe it. If it were Taoist mysticism, you'd believe it. If it were a sacred Eastern book, you'd believe it, because it's no exaggeration. Her perception in these canticles, 26 in total, is remarkable. In other words, 26 short poems. You can read them all in one sitting. I have a YouTube lecture dedicated to explaining these canticles, which are truly wonderful. Some people know the story of Cecilia Mayrell's. She lost her father before birth, became an orphan of her mother at 3, and was raised by her grandmother from the Azores. This grandmother gave her a nanny, Padrina, who raised her by telling stories. She was a solitary child, near death, having lost her parents without knowing. She graduated as a teacher, qualifying to teach, and began her career very young, around 17 or 18. Always brilliant, the class orator, always at the forefront, she started writing, receiving awards, and standing out. She married, but this was one of the most difficult periods of her life. With 3 daughters, her husband took his own life. So, throughout her life, she was constantly in conversation with hardship, with pain, with death. And she says that this greatly influenced her poetry, shaping her perception of what death cannot take from us, of what is real behind all the fleetingness of the world. She is a remarkable figure. Notice that there is something quite intriguing here, because Machado de Assis, who was extraordinary, was a descendant of Corias. Fernando Pessoa, who dispensed with unnecessary adjectives, was a descendant of Assis' cause, and his son Melchior's as well. In other words, we will see if we can achieve dual nationality against surrender to see if it increases our inspiration. Consider this marvelous excerpt from the Canticles. Do not say, "This one who gave me a body is my father," This one who gave me a body is my mother. Much more, your father and your mother are those who made you a spirit, and these were without name, without number, from all times, leaving their traces along today's paths. All those who have ever lived and continue to walk, day by day, those of today, of tomorrow, and all men and things, all silent, your extension continues in all directions. Your world has no resting place, and you are the world itself. That is, our parents are not only our physical parents. Today we spoke of Plato, of Socrates, of the homeland of Alexandria. Thanks to them, we are here. We are also what we are because of them. They are also our parents, nameless, countless, who have been shaping history. Hold in the depths of your heart a gratitude for this multitude of parents and ancestors who preceded you in history, for thanks to them, we are here. Well, everyone knows the beauty of Cecilia Meyerless. She was very beautiful, very gentle, very coherent with her work. Finally, you might say, wow, for the structuralists, she's going to talk about the international director of New Acropolis. I will talk to you about her, but she does not have as many published books as the others, as the more famous ones. But I have a reason to speak about her, and I will explain it clearly to you. She is a writer with 10 published books, a philosopher since her youth, and who, as international director, has coordinated the New Acropolis movement since 1991. Here is a phrase of hers that I selected for you, in light of our question about which kinds of knowledge truly help us overcome human anguish. We have only those that dispel inner ignorance and sow an imperishable light, fulfilling their true mission. It is not always enough to fill our heads with data that we call knowledge. It is necessary that these data provide an answer to our calls and concerns, an answer to life. In summary, only knowledge that makes us better is useful. As Socrates said, when you are in difficulty, look at everything you have learned in life and see what helps you get out of that situation. Only that was true knowledge. And to use it means a rare alignment of truth with practice, as Helena Blavatsky said. Well, as I told you, there is something very special I want to say. This woman can be considered an analyst of important philosophers in history. Beyond the 10 books she has written, beyond her dedication as international director since 1991, today she is 73 years old. Here we have at present 48,584 volunteers who work for the idea of practical philosophy around the world. They are not students. They are volunteers who work voluntarily to spread this idea. You might say, but if we add up all the philosophy students in the world, there must be many more. I agree. There must be many more, but they are students there to receive. I am talking about volunteers who are committed to giving, to sharing, to carrying this idea forward. Yes, there were schools where all the students were volunteers, like the Pythagoreans, for example, whom we just mentioned. According to Tacitus, there were 224 members of Plato's Academy, which was so long-lived. It probably was not more than that. Do not think there was a multitude inside Plato's Academy, neither the old nor the new. We have 48,584. Once, not on the same day I read Marilyn Monroe's diary, but perhaps on an astrologically equivalent day, I was curious to read bizarre things and picked up a business administration book. It was interesting. I saw a statement. If a person leads 1,000 people in a work relationship and the team is efficient, we can say that is a great leader. But if a person leads 1,000 people in a work relationship and those 1,000 people are volunteers and they perform well, you can say that is an exceptional leader. Leading volunteers is no joke. There are no motivations of interest, no fear or desire, no punishments or rewards. The only motivation is your conscience. You must set an example of a very active conscience so that the conscience of others is also stimulated to awaken. To awaken 1,000 people. Whoever leads 1,000 people in a voluntary work relationship is an exceptional leader, said this business administrator. This lady leads 48,584 volunteers worldwide since 1991 in a movement that only grows, offering neither rewards nor punishments, only the opportunity to strive to acquire a little more consciousness. Nothing is given for free. Therefore, I consider her worthy of recognition because it is unique in the historical moment we live in, especially in this current circumstance where materialism is so heightened and people are only motivated by what they will gain from it. That is why I consider her a very special figure, and her thought is what today builds New Acropolis as an institution. I am one of those who have been built, formed in values through these ideas. In short, the feminine works by uniting lucid thought with noble feelings. To think while feeling is to add perspectives for the good of the body, which must be loved. We add perspectives with the masculine, with other women around us, so that one day humanity may come a little closer to the truth through each one's vision. I brought this picture, this image of a cat. Everyone is wondering what a cat is to do with this story. It's because of a very silly situation that happened to me, but I like to tell these little stories first to show how philosopher is addicted to doing philosophy from 6 in the morning until they go to bed at night. There I was, in my bed. I am a proprietor of a certain number of cats. Lying in bed, I opened my eyes at 6 in the morning. The sunlight was all uneven, and there was a cat on the bed once. I opened one eye and saw the cat, then closed that eye and opened the other, and saw only mountains of sheets. I laughed to myself and thought, not even my eyes agree on what's on the bed. Now look how curious, because the two do not work only for themselves, but for the vision of the body. So, when the two, instead of fighting to be the owners of the truth, join together and give this vision to the body sees two possibilities, the sheet and the cat. If each of us, who is an eye, added our perspectives, the body of humanity would see much more of what is true, what is real, and would come much closer to it. Besides laughing, because at 6 in the morning I was already philosophizing before even opening my eyes. I found it interesting how, from small things, simple things in life, sometimes you draw knowledge that can help you better understand the human drama and human glory. To add up, the feminine has a vision, the masculine has a vision, one woman has a different vision from another, one man from another. Individuality. Each has a vision. Add all this up, and the body of humanity will see much better. The feminine aspect is extraordinary and can never, ever be disregarded without great loss to humanity as a whole. Life is a miracle for everyone. Reason is human, creativity is divine, but reason that feels is primarily feminine. Through it, we all become people capable of thinking while feeling. Through the heart of a woman, this mystery descends into the world and can be shared by all humanity. Well, that is what I wanted to bring to you. I know it was quite long. I apologize. I felt a bit more at ease to go into all the details I wanted. It was too long, but I hope I have left some message that allows you, as I said, if you leave here thinking about yourselves. I don't know if there is time for questions. I think not. They must be closing for the next event. So, I can only thank you for your presence and say that next year we will continue. We will have several lectures, and I hope that each of these reflections is adding up so that you may be ever more pregnant with wisdom, ever more ready to give birth to the possibilities that exist within you and want to come to light. Thank you, and Merry Christmas to all.